Tuning a drum kit is a very individual process. There are as many different ways to tune a drum kit as there are different drummers. We've all got our own sounds that we prefer, different tones. But I'm going to give you my experience of tuning the drums, and maybe you can find some help from this, and then obviously go on and discover your own way. But the way I do it is like this. I'm just going to do one drum. It's the same process for them all, in my opinion. I've taken the top head off and I've just got the bottom head here. What I'm going to do is just completely detune that head. So it's completely loose and doesn't have any distinctive tone. I've loosened off all of those tension rods now. So I always start by tightening them by hand first, like this. And then I know they're all starting from the same, roughly the same point. So I've got a sort of evenness already. Still not going to sound very much, this bottom head. It's got a bit of tone already. I like my drums to sound deep actually, so I get them sounding a bit deep and floppy like that, and then just take them up a little bit opposite each other. It's a small tom, this one, so the tone's going to be quite high on it. Some people also tune putting their finger in the middle and testing each of the tension rods, but that's making a fairly decent sound to my ear. Once I've got a decent sound on the bottom, I'll put the top head on. Again, I start by just doing all the tension rods by hand, so that I know they're sort of starting off from an equal place. So here we are. We've got the tension rods roughly equal to each other. If I tighten them by hand, I know they're all sort of starting at the same place there. So I've got a sound I'm happy with from the bottom head. Now it's just a matter of tuning this top head. Sounds a bit flat, not much tone coming out of it at the moment. I'm going to slowly adjust each of these. It's always best to tune opposite each other, and small tones each. You don't want to turn one, crank it up too high. There you go, it's starting to make a nice sound now. That drum is sounding quite nice to me already. So I'll do that with all my toms around the kit. Then I'll put them all on the kit together, and then make sure I got a nice distinctive tone from the high tom to middle tom to low tom tom, second low tom tom if you've got one. Doesn't matter how many drums you've got, you want a nice distinctive tone from each drum. I'll just share my advice with you about tuning the snare drum. Again, it's a very individual sound that people want to get, but this is the sound I get from my snare drum. Sometimes I change the tension of the top head depending on what type of music I'm doing. If I'm doing something that's got a jazzy feel or a bluesy feel, I might have it a little bit looser. You can get a bit of a better press roll from it. And if I'm doing something funky where I want a nice really tight rim shot sound on the snare, then I'll crank the snare drum up tight. So I'm going to show you roughly how I do that. It's tuned pretty much already. Again, I'd go through the same process of starting all the tension rods off equally. It's going to be sort of a bit loose. This is with the snares off. It's got a dampener on it, so I'll take that dampener off. Sounds a bit tubby for my liking, so I'm going to actually just crank that up a bit more. As you can see, I've got a metal drum here. This is a brass Ludwig drum, and I personally like that sort of metallic ring from the snare drum. You can take some of the ring off using a dampener. So I like the head quite nice and tight like that. That's with the snares off. With the snares on. And again, of course, you can vary the tightness of the snare there. I like it kind of tight, but not cranked up too tight so it's too choked. A bit of dampening on it. Makes the kind of sound I'm happy with. Might even take it a little bit tight. Some people recommend a snare drum to be board tight. I mean, that's really tight there. Depending on what sound you like. A little bit of advice about the snare head. This is a snare head at the bottom. It's a very thin head, so you don't want to play with the drums. A little word of suggestion here is, sometimes you can get a lot of sympathetic vibration from the snare when you're playing the toms and other parts of the kit. That might be rattling away there. Of course, it's designed to rattle. That's the whole idea of the snare, that it rattles in sympathy with the top head. When you play the top head, it rattles the bottom one. But if you're getting a little bit too much rattle from it, you can just loosen off the tension rods either side of the snare, and that should help reduce that somewhat. It doesn't want to be too tight, this head. You know, it's a very thin head, so you don't want to be cranking it up too tight. Using good heads on your drum kit can make all the difference to the sound of a kit. I've got some Aquarian heads here that I'm using on this drum kit today. But any good heads will make a lot of difference to the sound of your drum kit. Let's see what this one sounds like now.